I would like to introduce on the Thailand side the Deputy Ambassador of Thailand, of Kingdom of Thailand to Vietnam, Maraket Savanan, the first Secretary of the Kingdom of Thailand, and Mr. Khalid is also the embassy staff on the Ho Chi Minh Academy National Politics. We have Dr. Zung Chung-Ui, Professor, Deputy Vice President of the Academy, Professor Dr. Hoàng Trung Nghĩa, Head of the International Cooperation, and we have different deputy head of different departments in the academy. We also have different lecturers, researchers, and the institutes that belong to this academy. And I would like to extend a welcome to all of you. And now I would like to invite Mr. Wenda Catherine Church from KPI to introduce the Thai participants to this webinar.
Good afternoon. Thank you. Thank you very much. I am Wendell Keterenchik, Foreign Affairs Expert at King Prajadeepak Institute. I am afraid that our Secretary General, Professor Wittisan Tanchai, is unable to join us today. He sends his regrets. Representing the KPI's executive here is Dr. Tuinwati Burikun, Director of KPI's Research and Development Office. Dr. Tuinwati's research interests have long focused on environmental governance and political participation in decision-making concerning projects that affect the environment, with particular attention to gender participation in political decision-making. One of her earliest works was a study of environmental governance in Maktaput, a city on the Gulf of Thailand that is home to an industrial estate focusing on petrochemical industry. Her ongoing work in social audit and social quality illustrates her commitment to understanding and promoting citizens' participation in public policy and decision-making. We would now, from KPI, like to present a prepared message from our Deputy Secretary General, Vitawat Chaipakpum. He will welcome on behalf of KPI. So please play the video.
สวัสดีท่านผู้มีเกียรติทุกท่านนะครับต้องเรียนท่านผู้เข้าร่วมสัมมนาทุกท่านครับผมรู้สึกเป็นเกียรติอย่างยิ่งนะครับที่ได้เห็นทุกท่านให้ความสนใจในการเข้าร่วมสัมมนาระดมความคิดเห็นเรื่อง Environmental Governance Public Policy and Management to Sustainable Development in Thailand and Vietnam ในวันนี้นะครับซึ่งสถาบันพระปกเกล้าจัดทั้งในรูปของออนไลน์และออนไซต์นะครับผ่านระบบ Zoom และ Facebook ในวันนี้นะครับหัวข้อในวันนี้เป็นเรื่องสำคัญครับธรรมาภิบาลสิ่งแวดล้อม Environmental Governance เป็นการบริหารจัดการทรัพยากรธรรมชาติและสิ่งแวดล้อมที่ทุกภาคส่วนรวมทั้งประชาชนทั่วไปสามารถเข้าถึงข้อมูลข่าวสารเข้ามามีส่วนร่วมในการตัดสินใจทางนโยบายรวมทั้งการสามารถดำเนินกิจกรรมต่างๆตามแผนงานหรือโครงการที่อาจจะมีผลกระทบต่อสิ่งแวดล้อมได้และสามารถเข้าถึงความยุติธรรมดังนั้นธรรมาภิบาลสิ่งแวดล้อมจึงมีความสำคัญต่อการพัฒนาที่ยั่งยืนในประเด็นที่ว่าการนำธรรมาภิบาลสิ่งแวดล้อมไปใช้ในทุกระดับ ทั้งระดับประเทศหรือระดับท้องถิ่นต่างเน้นการไม่ให้บริการทางการเมืองสังคมและเศรษฐศาสตร์ที่ยึดโยงกับการใช้ธรรมวิบาลการใช้ธรรมชาติและสิ่งแวดล้อมนอกจากนี้การยึดหลักธรรมาภิบาลยังเอื้อให้เกิดกระบวนการตัดสินใจที่ดีทำให้เกิดสถาบันและองค์กรบริหารจัดการด้านสิ่งแวดล้อมที่มีประสิทธิภาพเกิดนโยบายเกิดกฎหมายเกิดกฎระเบียบและกิจกรรมต่างๆทางสิ่งแวดล้อมที่มีความเหมาะสมทำให้เกิดความสมดุลทางระบบนิเวศดังนั้นธรรมวิจารณ์สิ่งแวดล้อมจึงมีความสำคัญอย่างยิ่งต่อการพัฒนาประเทศนะครับแล้วก็ทั้งมิติสังคมเศรษฐศาสตร์และระบบนิเวศสิ่งแวดล้อมในทุกระดับอันนำไปสู่การพัฒนาที่เป็นธรรมและยั่งยืนการมีธรรมวิบาลสิ่งแวดล้อมยังช่วยลดความขัดแย้งที่เกิดนโยบายและพัฒนาต่างๆและสร้างสันติสุขในสังคมนะครับสำหรับประเทศไทยเองตัวรัฐธรรมนูญฉบับปี 2560 ก็ได้มีการกำหนดให้รัฐพึงจัดให้มียุทธศาสตร์เป็นเป้าหมายในการพัฒนาประเทศอย่างยั่งยืนตามหลักธรรมาภิบาลนะฮะซึ่งในยุทธศาสตร์ 20 ปีนั้นเนี่ยจะทำหน้าที่เป็นกรอบทิศทางในการพัฒนาที่เป็นภาพใหญ่ครอบคลุมการสร้างสมดุลระหว่างการพัฒนาประเทศด้านความมั่นคงเศรษฐกิจสังคมและสิ่งแวดล้อมเข้าด้วยกันด้วยกระบวนการมีส่วนร่วมของประชาชนทุกภาคส่วนสำหรับนโยบายการพัฒนาประเทศในช่วงระยะยาวของยุทธศาสตร์ชาติดังกล่าวของประเทศไทยก็จะเป็นไปตามกรอบของการพัฒนาประเทศ 6 ยุทธศาสตร์ 1 ยุทธศาสตร์ที่สำคัญที่ประเทศไทยนำมาใช้ก็คือเรื่องของหลักธรรมวิบาลและการพัฒนาที่ยั่งยืนมากำกับการพัฒนาในยุทธศาสตร์ด้านการสร้างความเติบโตบนคุณภาพของชีวิตที่เป็นมิตรต่อสิ่งแวดล้อมมีเป้าหมายและการพัฒนาที่สำคัญคือการนำไปสู่การบรรลุเป้าหมายของการพัฒนาประเทศที่ยั่งยืนในทุกมิติและในทุกฝ่ายที่เกี่ยวข้องเข้ามามีส่วนร่วมในการดำเนินการทั้งโดยทางตรงให้มากที่สุดที่จะเป็นไปได้เป็นการดำเนินการบนพื้นฐานของการเติบโตไปด้วยกันไม่ว่าจะเป็นในเรื่องของเศรษฐกิจสังคมสิ่งแวดล้อมและคุณภาพชีวิตอันจะนำไปสู่ความยั่งยืนเพื่อคนรุ่นต่อๆไปนะครับการส่งเสริมธรรมวิบาลในประเทศไทยภายใต้แผนยุทธศาสตร์ชาติธรรมวิบาลสิ่งแวดล้อมถูกนำมากำหนดเป็นแนวทางในการบริหารจัดการที่เกี่ยวกับสิ่งแวดล้อมเพื่อนำไปสู่ความยั่งยืนอาทิเช่นการพัฒนาและดำเนินโครงการด้านธรรมชาติและสิ่งแวดล้อมและวัฒนธรรมที่จะกำหนดอนาคตของประเทศไทยให้ทันสมัยบนหลักของการมีส่วนร่วมและมีธรรมาภิบาลโดยให้มีการบรรลุเป้าหมายการพัฒนาระยะยาวของประเทศด้วยการส่งเสริมพัฒนาวิสาหกิจขนาดกลางและขนาดย่อมให้มีการดำเนินธุรกิจอย่างยั่งยืนที่คำนึงถึงสิ่งแวดล้อมสังคมและธรรมาภิบาลนอกจากนี้ในส่วนของเป้าหมายของการพัฒนาที่ยั่งยืน Sustainable Development Goal จัดเป็นจุดมุ่งหมายปลายทางที่มีความท้าทายสำคัญสำหรับการดำเนินการตามนโยบายและการจัดการของประเทศของทุกๆประเทศด้วยสำหรับประเทศไทยเองก็เช่นเดียวกันได้มีการกำหนดเป้าหมายการพัฒนาที่ยั่งยืน17เป้าหมายพบว่าประเทศไทยยังอยู่ระหว่างการขับเคลื่อน SDGs ให้เป็นไปตามเป้าหมายที่กำหนดประเทศไทยยังไม่สามารถที่จะขับเคลื่อน SDG ให้บรรลุตามเป้าหมายที่กำหนดไว้ได้นะครับเพราะฉะนั้นก็ยังมีบางประเด็นที่สำคัญที่อาจจะต้องไม่สามารถอนุโลมได้เช่นเรื่องของรูปแบบของการผลิตผลทางการเกษตรซึ่งปัจจุบันก็ยังมีเรื่องของการพึ่งพาสารเคมีอยู่การกำจัดขยะนะครับในของเสียอันตรายหรือในเรื่องของปัญหามลพิษทางทะเลเป็นต้นเพราะฉะนั้นปัญหาต่างๆเหล่านี้เองต้องการเรื่องของการอาศัยหลักธรรมวิบาลสิ่งแวดล้อมซึ่งเป็นตัวสำคัญในการบริหารจัดการตลอดจนบูรณาการความร่วมมือของทุกภาคส่วนนะครับเพื่อให้ดำเนินการตามมาตรการที่มีประสิทธิภาพและเกิดผลเป็นรูปธรรมโดยเฉพาะอย่างยิ่งในมิติของการมีส่วนร่วมของประชาชนเป็นสำคัญนะครับสถาบันพระปกเกล้าในฐานะสถาบันวิชาการด้านการพัฒนาประเทศประชาธิปไตยธรรมาภิบาลและสันติวิธีมุ่งนำความรู้สู่สังคมเพื่อประโยชน์ส่วนร่วมได้ร่วมมือกับสถาบันโฮจิมินห์ National Academy of Politics นะครับตระหนักถึงความสำคัญของการแลกเปลี่ยนองค์ความรู้ทางด้านวิชาการที่เกี่ยวกับด้านธรรมาภิบาลสิ่งแวดล้อมและการพัฒนาที่ยั่งยืน ท่ามกลางบริบทที่มีความเฉพาะและน่าสนใจของประเทศไทยและเวียดนามนะครับงั้นการสัมมนาในครั้งนี้ก็จะเป็นโอกาสในการที่จะให้ท่านผู้สูงอายุท่านนักวิชาการทุกภาคส่วนโดยเฉพาะภาคประชาสังคมได้มีโอกาสแลกเปลี่ยนเรียนรู้กันแล้วก็มีประเด็นของการที่จะศึกษาร่วมกันในด้านธรรมาภิบาลสิ่งแวดล้อมอันจะนำไปสู่เรื่องของแนวทางในการพัฒนาเครื่องมือซึ่งนำไปสู่การปฏิบัติของภาครัฐและกลไกการมีส่วนร่วมในนโยบายและการจัดการสิ่งแวดล้อมสำหรับภาคประชาชนที่เหมาะสมกับบริบทของแต่ละประเทศนะครับเพื่อนำไปสู่การพัฒนาที่ยั่งยืนในโอกาสต่อไปสำหรับสาระสำคัญในการสัมมนาในเวทีวันนี้เนี่ยสถาบันพระปกเกล้าเองก็จะรวบรวมแล้วก็นำเสนอผ่านช่องทางในการเผยแพร่ของสถาบันต่อไปนะครับอาทิเช่นเว็บไซต์หรือในส่วนของการเผยแพร่ในช่องทางต่างๆเพื่อเป็นประโยชน์กับสาธารณะต่อไปผมขออนุญาตขอบคุณท่านผู้เข้าร่วมสัมมนาทุกท่านท่านผู้ทรงวุฒิท่านนักวิชาการทุกท่านรวมทั้งนักวิชาการจากประเทศต่างๆนะครับแล้วก็รวมทั้งหน่วยงานร่วมจัดนะครับก็ขอขอบคุณในการเข้าร่วมสัมมนาในวันนี้นะครับบัดนี้ได้เวลาสมควรแล้วผมขออนุญาตเปิดการสัมมนาหัวข้อ Environmental Governance Public Policy and Management for Sustainable Development in Thailand and Vietnam ขออวยพรให้ทุกท่านมีความสุขแล้วก็การสัมมนาในวันนี้ประสบความสำเร็จทุกประการนะครับขอบพระคุณครับ
I certainly hope the translation came through all right. With that, KPI thanks everyone for the opportunity to take part in this seminar, and I return the floor to Ho Chi Minh Academy.
Xin trân trọng cảm ơn bài phát biểu khai mạc phía Thái Lan của giáo sư Vitavas Chaipakum, Phó Tổng Thư ký Viện KPI Thái Lan. Kính thưa các vị đại biểu tham dự buổi tọa đàm hôm nay, còn có sự tham dự của Phó Giáo sư Tiến sĩ Lê Thị Thanh Hà, Phó Viện
We
trưởng.
also have this at this seminar, Associate Professor Lê Thanh Hà. Next, I would like to invite Dr. Professor Dương Trung Ý, Deputy Head of or Vice President of Ho Chi Minh Academy of National Politics, to give an opening speech. Excellency, Professor Vitavas,
Quốc vương KPI,
Deputy Secretary General, KPI, Excellency, Madam Deputy Ambassador of Kingdom of Thailand to Vietnam, honored participants on two sides in Vietnam and in Thailand. First of all, on behalf of the Board of Directors of Ho Chi Minh National Academy of Politics, I would like to warmly welcome Professor, the Secretary General of Thai, and other guests to participate in this webinar, both online and on-site. This is an event to mark the 46th anniversary of the establishment of diplomatic relations between Socialist Republic of Vietnam and the Kingdom of Thailand, August 6, 1976 and 2020, and the 55th anniversary of establishment and development of Asian Community. Honored participant, over the past 5 decades, the cooperative relationship between the two countries has been continuously consolidated and comprehensively developed in all fields. In particular, since the two countries officially upgraded their relationship into the strategic partnership in June 2013, the relationship has been deepened for the common prosperity of the two countries, contributing to peace, stability, self-reliance, and prosperity of the Asian community and the world. In terms of political diplomacy, security cooperation and development within regional and international cooperation framework, our two countries always strengthen the close cooperation and mutual support like United Nations, the Asian Pacific Economic Cooperation, APEC, the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, ASEAN, with the formation of Asian Community, AC, East Asia Summit, EAS, Asia-Europe Cooperation Forum, ASEM, Greater Mekong Sub-Region Cooperation, GMS, East-West Economic Corridor. The economic, trade and investment are increasing. Thailand is one of the partners with a large import and export turnover, with a total trade value among the top 10 countries with the largest trade relation with Vietnam. According to ITC statistics, Vietnam trade turnover with Thailand increased sevenfold from $2.31 billion in 2004 to $16.58 billion in 2020. The average growth rate is more than 11% per year. Regarding investment, up to now, Thailand has nearly 600 valid projects, equivalent to a total of registered capital of more than $10 billion, ranking third and among Asian countries investing in Vietnam after Singapore and Malaysia, ranked ninth among more than 130 countries and territories investing in Vietnam. In the world and regional context today, the cooperation and relationship between Vietnam and Thailand is increasingly consolidated and tightened in regular state visits and high-level talk between the head of the state and leaders of the two countries. Thailand is currently a country with a high average level of development in Southeast Asia and in the world. The experience of socio-economic development of Thailand transforming from a low-level agricultural country in the 50s and 60s in the last century into a modern industrial country, well in line with the SDG and the MDG will certainly inspire Vietnam today. Officially established cooperation relation in 2014, the two renewal of Memorandum of Understanding MOU, the Ho Chi Minh National Academy of Politics and Thai KPI has been in think tank relationship in education, training, research, and policy consulting since 1990s. Exchange delegation of leaders and experts, scholars, create international scientific talks and conference, publish joint research and share information, have actively and effectively contributed to the training and retraining of leaders, middle and senior managers and policy consultants of different agencies, at the same time contributing to promoting political trust and strengthening the strategic partnership in the world in all fields between the two countries. Therefore, today's discussion on environment governance, public policy and governance for sustainable development in Thailand and Vietnam will be another meaningful and practical academic exchange helping policy maker and implementer of the two countries, number one, share the valuable experience, and two, perfect and implement policy and law as well as sustainable development in general in Vietnam and Thailand. Ho Chi Minh National Academy of Politics and Thai KPI co-organize this seminar is a significant activity to better off the research cooperation between expert scholars of the two sides, a platform for the sharing of knowledge and experience of state governance between the two academies in particular. Hopefully, in the coming year, we can co-organize larger international conferences with the participation of scholars and experts, not only from Vietnam, Thailand, but also from other countries in Asia and Asia. Honored participants and science researchers fellow, people in the webinar today are leading researchers, lecturers, and scientific staff of the two academies. And I believe the webinar will be a good opportunity for them to exchange and share information about the new points, new findings, new initiatives of Vietnam and Thailand in the making of public policy. I hope that today's webinar will receive your attention through questions and discussion on the main issues presented in the paper. With that, on behalf of Ho Chi Minh Academy, I would like to announce the opening of today's scientific discussion, wishing all people good health, happiness, and success in life. May the relationship between the academy, two academies, successful, and the cooperation between Vietnam and Thailand will be strongly developed. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor.
Xin cảm ơn.
Please, after you. Sorry. Thank you very much, Professor. On behalf of KPI, we are very pleased and proud for the opportunity to have cooperated with Ho Chi Minh Academy over the years. And we look forward to further cooperation into the future. In a few moments, we will be joined by our keynote speaker, the United Nations Development Program Resident Representative to Thailand, Monsieur Bruno Meillet. Monsieur Meillet has been posted in Thailand since 2019 after moving from the UNDP country director position in Nepal. He has also had country director and deputy director experience in Afghanistan, the Philippines, and China. Previously, he was the special assistant to the UNDP associate administrator in the executive office in New York from 2002 to 2004, and special assistant to the director of the Bureau for Development Policy starting in 2000. Before joining the United Nations, Monsieur Meillet worked in Tunisia for the French Ministry of Foreign Affairs. A French citizen, Monsieur Meillet holds a master's in international relations and development studies from the University of Strasbourg and graduated from the Institut d'études politiques of Strasbourg. He also completed a one-year program of studies at the School of Foreign Service and Georgetown University in Washington, D.C. Today, Monsieur Meillet will be speaking to us about governance for sustainable development. So, without further ado, if we are prepared, I will please welcome a UNDP resident representative, Bruno Meillet.
Very good. Thank you so very much for the very kind introduction and the very long, and I apologize for that, bio details, but very kind. Let me start by greeting everyone. Sawadee Krap. Very good to be again with the King Prajadipok Institute on the occasion of this this conference. I'd like to thank the KPI for inviting UNDP to share our views on an incredibly important topic, not only because it's the core of the mandate of UNDP, governance for sustainable development, but also because I think the context in which we are today is extremely, requires, calls for increased and improved governance for sustainability. But let me also acknowledge my old friend Vijayan, who is here with us at KPI, and it's a pleasure always to be with him. I was going to start by thanking KPI for giving us an opportunity to come back to a full physical meeting. I need to amend this statement. It's not a full, but at least it's a hybrid one, and which is always already better than the lonely Zoom sessions that we've had to go through over the past many months, way too many months. And this transition now to a hybrid, and I hope very soon as COVID restrictions become lighter and lighter, different types of arrangements clearly show that we are moving towards an end of a very difficult 2+ years where we had to isolate ourselves and for our own safety. And this transition, I think should be accompanied by a lot of reflections on what lessons this extremely painful and dramatic incident is giving us. And I'd like to highlight, and there are many lessons, obviously, but I'd like to highlight two which I think are relevant to our topic. The first lesson is clearly how in today's world, the challenges that we face are of a very complex and interlinked nature. And COVID for this is a perfect example of how what started as a health pandemic, very quickly translated into social, then economic, and to in many ways and in many places around the world, even in political, civic challenges that all societies globally had to face. And in a way, and I don't want to be misinterpreted as looking at COVID as a positive thing, certainly not, but in a way it has validated an agenda that the UN and all its member states had designed prior to the eruption of COVID. And I'm here referring to Agenda 2030, to the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, which provides a framework where 17 issues are brought together as the pathway that member states of the UN have committed on following for the next 15 years as the pathway towards sustainability precisely. And we have seen, and I use the word validation because we have seen that one virus has, disrupted profoundly a lot of everything that we do and who we are and how we interact, therefore underlining the importance of those interlinkages and our ability to appreciate and understand those interlinkages between environment, poverty, governance, fundamentally interlinkages between the various rights that we have to not only protect but promote, and all the different sectors of society that are behind each of those values, right? So it's not only conceptually that issues are interlinked, but we need to translate those interlinkages in collaborations, in partnerships, and bringing into action a lot of different actors that before were all busy doing, what they have to do, but in isolation from one another, with limited collaboration and therefore limited impact. So the first lesson is therefore this very strong validation of the need to look at our world through a multiplicity of lenses, of prisms, so that we fully not only understand the challenges that we're facing, but we also identify multi-sectoral and integrated solutions that are required to address those challenges. And which then takes us to the second lesson, which really hits on the issue of governance, because if we acknowledge the multiplicity of lenses, the multi-sectoral nature of those challenges, then clearly what becomes extremely important is not only that we bring together the different issues, the different sectors, but that we also find the best ways to make them work together, to govern them, to manage them, to therefore create governance mechanisms that are conducive to this multiplicity, multi-sectoral approaches that we need to now adopt in everything we do. And we need to do this, I would say, at three different levels. We need to do it at global level. We need to do it at national level in the respective countries. But I think, and I will come back to this later, we also need to bring this down to the individual, to the people, to the communities. Right? And this is probably an area where we were doing much less in the past. But let me first go to the global level. Again, using COVID as a perfect example, an incident in a given country, even if it's, the most populated country in the world, immediately ripples all across the globe, right? The interconnectivity of our economies, the global market, the global society, the global community, the still, of course, existence of borders and frontiers, but how much we are interconnected through both digital but also physical travels and the links between people and governments. Everything shows how the planet is now the scale of a lot of what is happening. And we need, therefore, global governance systems that reflect this. And we know, and I'm well placed to talk about it as a UN official, we know that the current global governance systems are old, were defined, more than 50, 60, 70 years ago at a very specific period of our global history, and certainly requires revisions, reforms, and they are not easy to undertake because of the way that the previous system have been set up, right? But I think there is a consensus among all, not on what a new global governance should be, but on the need to reform the current global system. At national level, there is a clear cry for also much stronger governance systems, right? And this is irrespective of context, irrespective of continent, but everywhere around the world, we see calls and demands for much stronger governance systems. Governance systems that need to rely on a social contract between states and individual citizens that also need to be revisited. I think in today's world, the new generations, those young people call for a much stronger affirmative role for people. The idea of just waiting for a government or state or an administration to do things and deliver services and just, make use of them without any feedback, without any role in the definition of those services and the design of those services is long gone. The citizen equals just beneficiary period, I think, is over. More and more now, the citizen wants to become an active actor, an actor of his or her own life, of his or her own future in the relationship with states and with government. So a social contract that needs to also be profoundly rethought, and therefore governance mechanisms that reflect this, which takes us to this third level, the people level, right? This idea of an empowered citizen that therefore requires a governance system, platforms where this more active role, needs to find its place, where voices need to be able to be expressed, but also heard, where through the system of election, of democracy, you have equal participation of individuals, you have rule of law systems that reflect this participation. So, whether it's at global, national, or community people level, there is clearly a call for a revision of the governance system, a rethinking of how the big components of our existence on this planet, whether we look at prosperity as the key objective that people want, or the way that we are going to manage natural resources, our planet as the ecosystem in which we function, all those balances between people, planet, prosperity, in light of all the lessons coming out of COVID, coming out of this request for more responsive governance mechanism, need to be rethought. Let me pause here and bring us into a specific context of what is happening around the world, seen by the United Nations, which I represent here in Thailand. We have highlighted a number of crises. We refer them to simplify the narrative as the 3F, the letter F: fuel crisis, food crisis, finance crisis. Or we can also look at them through three transitions that we are all, I think, seeing as having to go through, right? Energy transition, right? Again, linked to fuel, linked to climate crisis. A food systems transition with the fragility, the vulnerabilities that we have seen of our food security systems. And on the reverse side, both as an opportunity, but also with its own risks, a digital transformation that is taking place and that requires, again, governance, principles, values, and rights in the way that it is unfolding in our society. To be more specific, I want to highlight what my boss, the UN Secretary General, has highlighted as the 5 priorities for the global community for 2022 in his speech at the General Assembly. And he highlighted COVID-19, no surprise, climate action, global finance, governance of cyberspace, and peace and security. Right? These were the 5 thematic priorities that the Secretary General put forward to the global community. And let me articulate for each of them the importance, again, of governance. Right? COVID-19 clearly requires those governance systems not only to manage the pandemic itself, and we have seen how, measures to protect citizens very often also translated into limits and limitations to the rights of the individuals. And how do we manage, govern, the balancing between this situation we currently see in places like Shanghai most recently, how complex this is, and how there is no, one-size-fits-all governance mechanism, the way that here in Thailand, the Thai government has responded to the crisis. And when I, as a French citizen, compared it to the way that my own government and my own citizens, co-citizens, responded to the crisis in France, very different. What the Thai people have been so diligently following in terms of guidance would have been extremely difficult in a place like France, and vice versa. And we see the impact, right? The number of casualties in comparison in those 2 countries. So a very important need to reflect on how governance applies to a certain place when confronted with a pandemic like COVID-19. Climate action is another priority and another sector that calls for governance, and again here at several levels: global, national, and even local. Right? And the governance systems, which is here, starts with a multilateral environmental agreement, the UNFCCC, the United Nations Framework Conventions Against Climate Change, provides the platform for conference of parties, as we call them, so the signatories, the member states signatories of the convention, through the different COP meetings, most recently COP26 in Glasgow. And we see how, despite the science making it very abundantly clear of the human impact on climate and its consequences, the difficulty we face to find the right governance mechanism to ensure global action because of this notion of differentiated shared responsibility, but differentiated role and contribution of each country. How do we explain to smaller, poor countries that they are now expected to in many ways limit, a lot of what their development calls for, when much larger, much richer countries, have been responsible for a much larger share of the consequences of climate change. So these are fundamental principles that are very, very difficult to move and push forward at global level. When it comes to finance, the governance systems are also here fundamentally complex, because more and more we see discourses, right, of what we call a populist nature of countries, very advanced, but they are taking decisions of going back towards a more domestic agenda, right? Prioritizing in their financial allocations problems back at home, as we say, when we all know that it is way more cost efficient, right, to invest where the root problems are. Let me take one good example of those financial decisions when it comes to deciding whether you are going to spend money on responding to a migrant crisis in a country like the UK, or if, as the UK, you're going to say, let's invest and support the countries from where the migrants are coming, and making sure that those countries are able, through development assistance, to provide better livelihoods and opportunities for the people in order to avoid them feeling compelled to migrate. Right? These are very important questions, and unfortunately today, pressure and more reaction than prevention measures are taking the lead in the way that decisions are being made when it comes to global finance mechanisms. The fourth priority area for the Secretary General for the UN is the governance of cyberspace. And this is again, extremely important, because we can see digital solutions, technology, the role that IT plays in our societies as both a very strong and powerful accelerator, again, COVID-19, and how reliant we have been on information technology to be able to continue working, to be able to continue learning, to be able to continue exchanging and trading when physically we were not to interact for health reasons. So we see the potential of those new technologies as accelerators of development. Yet there is also a risk that unless we look and address the existing digital divide, if we are only able to take, let's say, 1/4 of the global population and accelerate their development through development technology and leave 3/4 of the global community behind, and the gap between the two increasing, well, it's a mystery to no one that this is not going to be a sustainable solution for our societies. So as much as there is huge positive potential in digital solutions and digital transformation of our societies, of our economies, there are also risks inherent to this phenomenon, due principally to issues of digital literacy, where a lot of inequalities still persist. And we have seen colleagues from UNICEF, UNESCO, really alert us. And coming September at a global summit on transforming education, this issue will be raised. Because again, here a lot of lessons have been learned, where children in well-off societies, well-off families who had access to computers, to the internet, were able to continue learning and acquiring skills and knowledge. But the children who were in more vulnerable and unfavorable economically families were left behind because not able to access online classes. And the gap between the two groups, has unfortunately increased. So again, an area that is happening as we speak, and the fact that I'm able to speak directly to colleagues and partners and friends in Vietnam, shows the power of those digital solutions of this innovation sphere, but also a need for very strong governance mechanism there so that this benefits everyone. And the final one, which unfortunately for humanity has been on the agenda of our priorities for too many years, is the agenda of peace and security. And here again, it goes back to the issue of global governance systems and how our global community is governed, managed, whether there is a sentiment that the principle of one country, one vote still, is sufficient for the global community and the global humanity to move forward together, or if the accumulated imbalances, disparities between nations, within nations, call for more relative actions, for more what we call positive discrimination, for more incentives for those who are behind are able to catch up while we all move forward on the pathway towards sustainability. So I've tried to show how, through whether you look at it from the three crises, the three transformations, or just the prioritization of the issues that we in the UN observing and are highlighting for action at the level of the member states and the global community, how for all of these, governance is really a foundational condition of success. But I want to finish by asking ourselves another question related to governance, and that is, if we, I hope, agree that governance is important, what type of governance do we believe is needed? Right? And this is a much necessary discussion, because there are, of course, multiple types of governance, and over our history, we have seen different countries adopting different types of governance with different results, different degrees of acceptance, and different perspectives on this. The old debate, which unfortunately in many ways still remains valid, is how do we balance efficiency of our governance systems with a rights-based approach to those governance systems? How do we ensure impact of decisions being made and participation to the decision-making? How do we respond to those who say sometimes more authoritative types of regimes, types of governance systems are more efficient, especially in times of crises? To this, we have kind of a non-negotiable point of departure, which is the rights-based approach to development, the rights-based approach to governance, a governance system that profoundly and fundamentally respects the human rights of each individual. And this is where, when we talk about governance for sustainable development, the understanding of sustainability, in our view, cannot be limited to sustainability from what I would call a green agenda perspective, but also to include a social dimension, a human dimension. And that is, how do we ensure that the sustainability also is fundamentally integral to inclusion, to participation? I'm sure if we were to do a poll just on the basis of the people who participate in today's workshop, if we were to ask whether they would want to be included in decisions that will be made by any governance system, but that will affect them, I'm pretty sure a very, very large majority of us would say, yes, of course, we want to be included. Yes, of course, we want to have a say in the laws, the rules, the regulations that will be decided and agreed upon that will directly impact and affect our lives. What we see happening all around the world with the younger generation, especially what we see happening in Thailand almost every day, every week, with the younger generation demonstrating and calling from a stronger role, a stronger and louder voice in the debates that are leading towards the upcoming elections here later. All this points to the type of governance that is both wanted, but I believe needed to ensure sustainability. Sustainability, I think, is an easy principle of consensus. I doubt that I would ever find anyone telling me that they don't want a sustainable future. I think there is a growing consensus on the understanding of what sustainability means, especially after this COVID period, when you unfold the principle of sustainability as defined by the relationship between our human activities and our search for prosperity and the need to protect our ecosystems, for a longer term management and a renewal and refreshing of those natural resources. But I think we hear a growing call also for elements of sustainability that speaks to social justice, to rights, to voice, to civic space, to citizen participation. And it will be, I think, increasingly difficult to imagine sustainability without this strong human and individual inclusion elements to its way forward. With this, I thank you very much for your attention. I hope that those elements have created some more ideas, some more questions. And I don't know if time permits, but it would be very interesting to debate this. But I'm sure if not today, KPI is always very good at providing platforms for debates such as those. Thank you very much.
Xin được trân trọng cảm ơn bài
Right. Thank you for keynote speaker of UNDP representative in Thailand. And now we move to the first presentation from KPI Thailand.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm
Xin chào tất cả.
Director of Research and Development of King Prajatipok Institute. I will introduce Thai speaker, Ms. Nitya Phonok, the senior researcher from King Prajatipok Institute, Research and Development Office. Presently, she is studying for her PhD at Mahidol University in Environmental and Resources Studies International Program. And she got master's degree in political science from Thammasat University and bachelor degree in physical education from Srinakharin University. She has many research projects related to environmental politics, empowerment of people's rights, study of women's participation in politics and promoting gender responsive participatory budgeting in Thailand, and some research related to community justice and also the community capacity in water resource management. The paper that she is going to present is part of her research work at KPI. The paper topics is environmental politics in Thailand, policy evolution and management for sustainability. Please, Nitya, please.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Thank you, Dr. Turinwadi, and thank you all participants. For this research, it is the title Environmental Politics in Thailand. I conducted research last year with my two colleagues in KPI, and Dr. Turinwadi, she is our consultant for this project. For this research, I have the background for studying in this research because we review the environmental politics evolution from the global context. And we found that the environmental issue in global context moved from agricultural development, then we moved to industrial development. And because of the high development of our nation, it caused waste problem, water pollution, air pollution, that make our nation to collaborate together to solve this kind of problem. And then because the evolution of the environmental politics around the world is caused the interest to study in this topic to explore environmental politics evolution in Thailand, because we would like to create a database or the knowledge about environmental politics in Thailand. Also, we would like to discuss the participation in environmental politics in Thailand, whether it serves to sustainability or not. As I mentioned earlier that we conducted research last year. Indeed, we rely on many methods to collect data. We interview, we make a focus group across 5 regions with around 49 participants. But for my presentation today, I would like to present just only the document or the systematic review of documents that we derive from the policy document, such as policy in statement, Thailand Constitution, and relevant law about the environment, such as the forest, the land, and water. We also explore Thai research from key database, from Google Scholar, from ThaiList, and ThaiJo. First of all, we gather information around 433 pieces of the study about environmental politics, decision-making, and participation. But we have to scope our study. So we focus to review just only the research work. Then lastly, we have the research work to review about environmental politics at 47 pieces. We review this research along with the policy document and analyze by content analysis and description. From now on, I will focus to present for 3 parts. Firstly, I will present about the concept used in this study, and then it is the discussion section about the evolution of environmental politics in Thailand. And lastly, I will present about the succession from this study. First of all, I think that everyone in this room and via online or from Vietnam know what is the environment. We all have the basic understanding about environment, that it is the natural and man-made environment, such as the water, the air, the climate, the human and living things. But if we talk about environmental politics, we need to know about the impact and its characteristics, because the environmental problem have the characteristics like if one person are the polluter, they cause the effect to the other person, even the other person didn't didn't make the pollution. And the environmental problem also have one characteristic, that is the uncertainty. It is non-predictable to forecast or to manage the environmental problem correctly or easily. So that's why we have to study environmental politics, because the environmental problem quite affects to overall people in the society, and it needs collaboration from all people. So in this study, we place environmental politics in the terms of involving people in decision making, involve people in policy implementation and following up and receiving the benefit and impact from the environment. For this meaning of environmental politics, it has a link with sustainability approach in terms of the participation. Moreover, to lead the sustainability development, we need to have a long-term plan for our development. It means we need to plan for not only our people in this generation, but also the people in the next generation also. And then we need to concern on the capacity of development of the area, of the specific area, and need to focus on the method or process, then focusing on the goal, and need to concern on the holistic approach also. But today I will present to focus just only in the participation approach. And this is the result and discussion section. From the policy document and the research work, we classify Thailand environmental politics evolution into two parts. The first part is around 1932 to 1996, and the latter part is 1997 to 2021. We divide into these two parts because the Thailand Constitution 1997 is the critical point to divide into these two parts that I will further explain later. But I would like to present the first period of environmental politics in Thailand from the policy document, policy statement, and the constitution. It mostly mentioned about promote agriculture and promote to use the natural resource to stimulate the economic growth. However, along the late of this period, around 1992 and 1996, the government tend to have the policy that promote to people participation in natural resource, such as they provide the opportunity of the people to involve in local forest management, for example. And about the law relevant to the resource in this period, we found that it is similar to the policy statement and the constitution that mention a lot about the responsibility of the government sector to manage the resource, like preserving, conserving the resource. Many activity or many responsibility mainly based on the duty of the government sector. However, we discussed that we have one law that is very good and open the opportunity for the people sector in this period. Is it the law in 1992? Let me read the name of the law. The name is Title Enhancement and Conservation of National Environmental Quality Act 1992. this law open up the opportunity of people in the environmental management, and the government have to open the information to the people in case that those projects will affect to the health and the environmental quality. And then this law also opened the opportunity for people organization to register as the organization in environmental activity and natural resource. So in this period, even the constitution or the policy statement mention the key role of the government sector to manage the environment and natural resource, but this law quite open the opportunity to the people that affect to the Thailand Constitution in 1997. We call this constitution that it is the constitution for participation of people, because it is firstly mentioned about the people right and participation in natural resource and environment. This notion is delivered to the next constitution in 2007 and 2017 also. So Thailand, from the latter period in 1997 to 2021, we have the related law about the environment that promote the people right and participation in environmental policy more than the previous period. And the delayed law in this period quite more able to complex environment like tourism management that have a linkage with environment in the local area. And even we have the constitution and the law that support to people participation, but the participation in environment and sustainability in Thailand that we found from the research work, we mentioned that the people enter into the participatory process or involved in the environmental issue because they feel that the impact from government projects have bad effect to their life. So they try to enter into the decision-making process so that they can acquire or so that they can inform about their need to the government. And for their action, we found that they also involve in the local regulation. They work with the local government so that they can initiate the rule to manage their own resource. And in terms of informal action, they involve in the environmental issue by building a group, make a campaign to raise awareness and do a protest to ask for their right according to the constitution. However, even they have a formal and informal method to involve in the environmental politics, we discussed that they still have the problem to the participation because some laws still have the notion about centralization that obstruct to decentralization at the local level. And for EIA, we established EIA process in Thailand for a long time, but it is still a limit the participation in decision-making of people. Even it needs the people to participate in the process of EIA, but in final decision to prove whether this project can be constructed or not, it is depend on the government sector. Then from our finding and our discussion, we suggest that the government should promote more participation in environmental decision making because the people have the right and have exercised their participation in terms of the policy implementation and monitoring for long time. So they should promote the right and participation of people in decision-making process also, and to comprehensive the participation widely. Next is the government should concern more on environmental aspects than economic, because from the research, we found that many people still need the development that companion with their area need, and the development of the government mostly rely on the economic aspect. And for the academic recommendation, we suggest that we should have more research about sustainability to evaluate the level and measure on environmental politics, because we found that from the three database, there are the limit of the study about sustainable development. Thank you very much for your attention. This is the end of my presentation.
So thank you very much, Kuditaya. Now I think we turn over to the Vietnamese team, please.
Xin trân trọng cảm ơn bà Nithai Ponok.
Thank you, Nithya Ponok, KPI specialist, for your talk on environment politics, sustainable development. And next, I would like to invite PhD Dr. Đặng Thị Ánh Thuyết, giving a talk on overview of environmental protection in association with sustainable development and the guiding viewpoint of the Communist Party of Vietnam. Excellency, the Chairman, honor participants, research fellows, on behalf of the research group of Ho Chi Minh National Academy of Politics, I would like to give you a very quick look on the environmental protection in association with sustainable development and the guiding viewpoint of the Communist Party of Vietnam. And my fellow partner is Madame Hang. As from the viewpoint of the Communist Party of Vietnam on environment and sustainable development over the years, since early as in 1991, we have been focusing on sustainable development as presented more clearly, specifically and fully, emphasizing the environmental protection, but not officially mention the three pillars. The three pillars here are the economy, society, environment. So you can see those three pillars in the circle here. In other words, those are the three issues that need to be interlinked in the development of the economy in Vietnam. We strongly insist on environmental protection with protecting the people's health and we call it, it is a measure of sustainable development. And together with sustainable development, you can see the documents in Party Congress usually mention the 3 pillars of sustainable development on the basis of a close, reasonable, and harmonious combination of socio-economic development and environment protection in order to minimize, to mitigate all the negative impacts of the disasters, of the crisis, especially in area where it is polluted, where it is degraded. There's a lot of investigations and preserve of natural resource, planning for protection and reasonable exploitation and biodiversity maintenance. And the fourth bullet points that you can see here is try to maintain the hygiene, protect and embellish the environmental landscape. Next is try to meet the environmental requirement in the international economic integration and promote the transformation of the growth model associated with the economic restructure toward green growth and sustainable development. It is very important because it expresses our viewpoint of the Communist Party of Vietnam from the Congress number 8 to Congress 13. That is, the 3 pillars must go very well together. The resolution number 41 and resolution 24, 2004, 2013, we see that it has been repeated and repeated that environmental protection must be the key issue, the vital issues of national security. It means that when we look at the reform starting in 1986 up to now, the key points must be protecting the environment is one of the 3 pillars. In 2017, the Prime Minister signed and approved the National Action Plan for the implementation of Agenda for Sustainable Development. And we have seen a lot of achievements in sustainable development. In 2020, we promulgate the law on environmental protection. And most recently, in the 13th Congress of the Communist Party of Vietnam is again reaffirmed that protecting the environment and people's health is a top goal, resolutely eliminate projects that cause environmental pollution, ensure the quality of the environment, protecting biodiversity, etc. It is the first time in the document of the Communist Party, a new concept is introduced. We call it a green and circular, environmental friendly economy. So the viewpoint that has been institutionalized into the law and a new breakthrough of the 2020 environment law. So you see 9 breakthroughs in here, but from our point of view, we also prefer to look at the community. The residential community will be the key actor. And why? Because it emphasizes the right and responsibility and subject role of the people in the local, when they protect the environment. So see, the viewpoint has been constitutionalized, institutionalized into law, and then all people have the right to participate in, to raise their voice. We give them the opportunity, we give them the framework, so that they can develop, but they also protect their own environment. What we want to talk more about in here is that not only people listen to us, but also we give them, we tell them the information about the environment that may affect their life, that may affect their livelihood. We have seen a lot of local initiative that promotes people to participate. And what we can see here, when the Communist Party viewpoint can be seen in real life practice, that is when the local authority is now not above people, but they are together with people. All the information is updated, all the index has been provided. It's not only at national level, but also at local level, from the, we call it grassroots level. So it is a very consistent from Communist Party, national issues, state governance, local authority practice, and the benefits for local people. For example, right in my own homeland, when there is staff from Formosa, the PR official in Formosa, the steel company is causing pollution in central Vietnam. He said, fish or environment, which one would you choose? Now that would be one of the reasons why people raise their voice and say, it's the environment that we want to protect. It's not because of the pollution that you bring about. You have seen that Vietnam is one of the 4 countries in Southeast Asia mostly affected by extreme weather event in the past 2 decades. It is a challenge for us in environmental governance, and this urge that push the Communist Party needs to give instruction to the state, ask the state to allow people to participate more in environmental protection. With disasters, with the loss of life, with the loss of property like this in Vietnamese GDP, in Vietnamese economy, in Vietnamese life, it is a big question. Together, we can also see World Bank evaluations on environmental disaster has been causing a 5% of loss to the economy development in Vietnam. Now, we look at the use of domestic water use. For example, we ask question on water from the rivers, stream, or canal, whether it is enough, whether it is clean enough to drink, or whether it is enough to use to wash the clothes, or whether they're clean enough to swim in. And you can see the number in here. It is 5.45. It's 15.95. It's 19.51. You see, it's a very low percentage. It is a challenge for us for clean water supply. That is one of the case study for policy maker at the national level, at the local level on clean water resource. Or air quality. Assessed by Vietnamese people in 2021, the question is whether do we need to wear a mask to protect our respiratory. The percentage is low. Now, the development of industries, the economic development is giving its negative impact to people's life. For example, you can see in the last question, the percentage of respondents who said that the air quality is better than the resident area than 3 years ago, only nearly 40%. Now, I think that you will hear more talk about this by Dr. Lê Thanh Chiến, who will go further into these issues. Or environmental governance, as you can see on the slide. The question is, what is the responsibility and the duty of the local authority in environmental governance? The question here is not yet the viewpoint of the Communist Party has not been going through the local authority to the local people. If we ask people whether the business say they do not bribe to avoid the obligation of environmental protection fee, only 60% say, yeah, that is it. Now, this is low. Then other question on reporting environmental problems, on the competent authority, on local authority prioritize environmental protection over economic development. You see, those questions receive low response. The percentage is low. That is why in the coming year, the local authority, the local enterprises, businesses needs to join hands to protect the environment. And that is the emphasis in the law in issues in 2022. My fellow researcher and me also work on the impacts of natural disaster on rice field. In Mekong Delta, along the whole riverside area, you can see the negative impact is now on the local rice farmer in the Mekong River. It's a lot. You can see it's number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. According to 2019 census, most of the people in the local area have migrated to the cities, and then salinity intrusion and other environmental impact has no people to fight against them. And the natural disaster on fruit tree is the same. You can see the percentage of the respondents say the negative impact of climate change, of natural disaster, is now affecting the fruit tree orchard, the farming. The climate change has been so bad on their livelihood, and it is causing headache to local authority along the whole riverside. So, livelihood is not sustainable, and it's not just in one province, it's also about about 5 provinces along the river, because people have to spend more, they have to invest more, and then the natural disaster come, it takes away all their investments in the river. It's a flood, it's the change of the water flow, it all affects the food supply, food security, and that is also a place for policymakers to look at in order to help them to live a better life, to have a green and circular economy well in practice in those areas. Now, migration to urban, to cities, is also a question, because it's not because of the natural disaster. That's because of the attraction in city life. They have better school, they have a better job opportunities, they have better health service. So, how can we avoid the cause of environmental problem? We can see the theory on rapid population growth is also a problem with nearly 100 million people in Vietnamese population. It's rapid population growth, it's industrial and service development, it's land abuse and urbanization, it's production expansion. It's all the problems that goes together with the growing of population, with the pressure on the environment. So, what can the government do? How can we open more job opportunity in industrial zones, in farming, in order to reduce the risk of the unsustainable development? You can see Hanoi City, Ho Chi Minh City, where pollution is so severe, and now it directly affects people's health. A lot of people in Vietnam is now having cancer, respiratory disease. Now, the longevity, the living age of Vietnam in Vietnam is old, but the year they live a happy and healthy life is not long because of the population. And without solution, effective solution, comprehensive solution, then the longevity of Vietnamese people would not be as long as it expected. So what can we do to protect the environment? In relation to sustainable development, of course, in the 4.0 industrial revolution, we see industrial zones. It's of course, but we need to have to make people be aware of protecting the environment. We live healthy and harmoniously with the environment. Vietnam has been committed to 8 target of the Sustainable Development Goals, but its impact on people's life, on social life, require a stronger governance of the state, of the local authority, in order to achieve all 17 SDGs, whether the answer can be found in human resource, in our knowledge, on whether we help people, on whether we try to highlight people-centered approach. what can we do to help them to be more active? Well, I think it is what the local authority will have to do to translate all the viewpoint of the Communist Party into the real action. And in this last slide, you can see the strong determination of the Vietnamese Communist Party that need to be translated into action. If you look at this, you can see the consistencies of the three pillars, as I have already talked about at the beginning. In order to avoid damaging the environment, and it also means damaging our livelihood of the local people. It is a job of the local authority at different level to protect the environment, to ensure the green growth, the green economy, the circular economy. In other words, we can remove the bottleneck that stop us from our development. So that is what I want to share with you about the viewpoint of the Communist Party in relationship with the environmental protection, sustainable development. When we look at investigation on climate change, on PAPI, I want to thank you, Ho Chi Minh City Academy. I want to thank you on KPI that give me this opportunity. Thank you very much.
So thank you very much. The next presenter is the Thai presenter, Dr. Juthathip Manipong, the independent researcher. Dr. Manipong holds a PhD in urban development and regional planning from University of New South Wales, Australia. She has extensive skills on policy advocacy and service delivery, legal tactics and frameworks, including participatory organization, analysis and needs diagnostic in Thailand, Greater Mekong sub-regional countries, Southeast Asia, and the Access Initiative project in collaboration with many countries in Asia under the support from World Resource Institute. She led several researchers on rights to information and promotion of open data to publics. She has worked on several assignments of EU on CSO's engagement in the implementation and monitoring of SDG, including the strategic engagement plan of CSO in achieving Thailand's sustainable development goals. The paper that Dr. Manipong is going to present is on study findings, national reform on information access pertaining to environment and public health between June 2018 to June 2019. Please, Dr. Manipong.
Thank you, Dr. Swinwadi. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm very honored to share with you these research findings. Let me use the slide PowerPoint. Nokแชร์ได้ไหม? We have a bit of technical problems. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, let's try. Okay, all right. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, so can you continue to the second slide, please? These studies, I'm very, very honored to be the principal investigators to lead the teams of researchers that work from Thailand Environmental Institute, TEI. And here's in the second slide, you see all the name lists of the researchers who are very keen doing these studies with the advisors of lawyers from Council of Thailand and the chairpersons of Personal Data Protections Committee, Mr. Tianchai Nanakon. Go to the next slide, please. In the next slide, I'm talking about why we calling for the national reform on this issue. As you see that there are lots of political and social conflicts that cause from lacks of right protections and obstacle to the public participations. In addition, the situation gets worse when the public or community cannot really protect the health risk or health impact because they don't know, they don't have any information and they don't know what is the situation around that village or around their community. Therefore, in this research, we want to look from both sides, from the user of the data and from the supplier of the data, because in the next slide, you will see that in Thailand, we already have the legal frameworks that governs our rights of people to access the information, is starting from our own institutions in 2017, that individual and community shall have the right to know and access the information or public information in the possessions of the government agencies. So we have the rights based on our constitution. In addition, we also have official information acts that has been enacted since 1997. And it specified clearly that there are 6 types of information or data from our 20 government agency must be disclosed without any formal request. We can look at it in detail in the next slide. After the 1997 acts, we also have specifies on environmental information in Article 9 in subsections of 8 on the principles of disclosing information related to environment and health. It's starting from the report, the analysis on health risks and impact that needs to be disclosed without any formal request. The second one is the research findings and statistics that needs to be freely available for the public. Number 3 is report on the public hearings, such as environmental impact assessment studies or EIA or urban plans. The next one is contract commissions, lease permits, and including the plans, policy, budget, loans, project, program. All these needs to be disclosed without any formal request. Importantly, in the article number 9 specify clearly is that international agreements, MOU, bilateral agreements also needs to be disclosed too. And lately, we have a very clear policies and legal framework on Personal Data Protection Acts in 2020s that requires that consents or permissions from individual or from agencies before they can process collections or disclose the personal data. In these studies, we adopt the international principle or frameworks, as you see in the next slide. Before this slide, please. Okay. Okay. Anyway, okay, keep going, please. Okay. In this slide, okay, we show you how we scope this study from these three drivers. Because when we look through the statistics, we've seen that more than 10 years, there is no monitoring and evaluations of how people or users or even suppliers of the data has been implemented. So that's why we think there is a need for this study. The second driver, when we look at the statistic, we found that not many complaints or many requests to the official information committees, because we don't know what is it all about. People scared or people don't use the data. So that's why we think that it's time to look at it in detail. And number three, we have seen a lot of other study mentions about the lack of knowledge and understanding of the service provider or service supplier. It's been the government officials found some difficulty in terms of release the information or disclose the information. And the user still demand some informations. So that's why we come up with a study to focus in three areas. Number one, we revise the data category that are related to environment and public health. Number two, we examine how the data on environment and public health has been released. And we try to identify what are the obstacles and how to improve the data. So finally, we propose the guideline how to improve the access to information. Next slide, we show you the principle. How can we set up the guideline, or how can we set up the criteria to access the information that has been released in the public venues of the government agency. We follow these six principles. Number one is principle 10 of Rio de Janeiro. This one is focusing on people have a right to access to the participation, especially the decision-making participation. Number two, people have a right to access to the information of the public or government agencies. People have a right to access to justice when they get damaged or when they need the compensations. Number two, we look at the UN principle on right to know. People need to be able to access and have a right to know without any discrimination, whether they are different gender, whether they are different ethnics and others. Number three is the principle of open government participation partnership. This is in order to promote that the public need to get transparency and accountability from the government agency, from the private agencies. And in Thailand, we have three principles on access to information. Number one is 8 principle of open government data. Number two, it's 6 good data parameters that's set by our National Statistical Office. And the last one, it's good governance to support the open data of the government in 3 areas. The rule of law in promoting transparency and the responsibility. From this, in the next slide, you will see that from the principle, and then we review the secondary data, and we have a workshop with the user. Most of the user are civil society or CSO and others. and then we interview with the government official. So we come up with how to access the public data of the government agency in three issues, because most of the user, most of the suppliers, I mean the government agencies, identify or makes the data available publicly. However, there are doubts about three issues. Number one is quality of the data. Number two, how to access the data without formal requests. And number three, how the data can be useful for both suppliers and for user. Therefore, we come up with the four methodologies to do this assessment. Number one, we review the online informations of 6 organizations by 15 parameters. I'm going to show you some parameters. And the next one is we review the procedure of requesting the data formally to the government committees, and we observe the meetings when the office of the official informations conduct their investigation. And last but not least, we do in-depth analysis of 2 case studies in water refuge charge and the air pollution issue. These slides show you how we develop the indicator and parameter to access the online government data and informations. As I mentioned that there are lots of information available in the website of the government. So the question is how this data, number one, completed. So we put it in 3 categories and then access it. And ranking it. Number one, if it needs to be improved, okay, so they are in ranking, the low ranking. The medium ranking, when they doing not too bad, like they provide some data, but the quality is not up to standard. And they will get the high rankings one if they have a complete set of data. Or the next one is sufficient and clear rule and regulations, how they're going to release the informations. The next one is there any bias? Do they specify the source of informations? The next one, it's the data is up to date. If it's later than 1 year, it means the data is not up to date. The next slide will show you the last sets under the parameter of quality of data. Number one, if it's too technical, if it's too complicated data, it means that it's still not easy for the user to understand it. The next one is whether the disseminations of the data is online, it's on time or not. If it's very late, so the data is not relevant anymore. So it's no point to put it there. The last one is how the user can be using it. This one, we put the lens of user point of view, whether that's data target to any specific groups and then cater to the needs of the user or not. This kind of parameter we use for 3 groups of parameters. As I mentioned, so the quality of data, and then the access to the data, and the last one is the usefulness of the data. The next slide will show you the flow. Okay, when you cannot find the data in the government websites, individual can go or can request to the government information center in each agency and ask for the data. However, you need to pay for your own course to get that data. It's quite expensive when you find out that the data that you want have like 1,000 pages or even more. The next one, if the government information center say that they cannot give you the informations now because of whatever reasons, like they can say that the data is not available because it's not publicly released. So you need to submit a formal request to that government information center, and the official will ask his or her superiors permission first before they disclose the information. After that, you can go to make a copy of your data. So it takes a bit of time, and then you have to schedule your own course. Therefore, we found out in the next slide. The next slide, okay, if that government refuses to provide you the data, you need to submit your petition to the official data office to ask the government agency to release the information within 15 days. And the commission on the government information will take 30 to 60 days to do the investigation and make decision whether that data should be disclosed or not. You can see the long process before you can actually get the result, whether you're going to get that information or not. It's already take at least 60 days or 90 days, at least. And in many cases, it can be even longer. So that's why we come up with the key findings of this research in the next slide. We provide 5 key indicator findings. Number one, we conclude that the government agency disclosed procedure are reasonable, acceptable, and they need to improve the data qualities. From our investigation of 6 government agencies, only 2 agencies provide reasonable or acceptable qualities of the data information. The problems of the government information disclosure is because the government declared that many data is only for internal use of the government agency, or it's only for the use of the private firm who provide the government data. It's not for the public use. Next finding, we found out that the data itself have a lot of problems because it's very generic. There is no classifications of the data. Sometimes the government agency provide law data, technical data without any kind of analysis. So it's very, very hard for the public or the community to understand the data or to do the analysis by themselves. Even the scholar or the academic people found the same kind of challenges. The next problem is the data come from different or each department. So it was very hard to do the cross or integrated the analysis. But as we know that if you want to find out about environmental or health impact, you can't just only go to only one agency. It's like Department of Quality Control or Department of Pollution Control. You need to get the data from Department of Health. But when you get 2 sets of data, you still cannot find out whether that substance or that pollutants really harm your help or not. So it's really hard when you are not technicians. The last one, we found out that the user, especially the civil society organization, they have no knowledge or understand the rights, the legal right to ask for these government agencies' data. They don't know when the government refuse or ignore their request, what to do next. They need to go to the petitions to the government agency and specify that they request the data to be disclosed. Therefore, in the next slide, we offer the 3 set of recommendations. Of course, the first one, we recommend based on the principle of information disclosure. First, we said that we need to have the standard of data collections for all at least 20 government agencies. Number 2, because the government official, they're very worried, they're very scared how much that they can disclose the data. So it will be helpful if we have the kind of like they call harm tests to balance the public interest, the public benefits, and the security of the government, so that the government agency and the government official can be safe. They feel safe to disclose the government data. The next one is, in principle, the environmental and health data need to be disclosed, follow the constitution, follow the acts. But right now, there is no detail in how to do that. The next recommendation, we recommend that apart from the private access to the information, the government website should allow the public to access the information too. And the next recommendation is we need to motivate the government agency to comply with our law on the information disclosed by giving the key indicator of performance, KPI, very high for the government agency that comply with these acts. Last but not least, to increase the quality of the informations, we need to have a very strong or rigid monitoring of the performance of the government agency. Next is the recommendations on the information's qualities, of course. We recommend.
Please wrap up because time is going to be gone. Yeah.
Yes, thank you. Okay, 1 minute for this one. Recommendations on the information qualities is we need more categories to be released according to the articles and also the international standards. The last slide, it's on the recommendations of the information user, that the user, especially the communities and the civil society, should be encouraged to share that communities or the local data. Thank you for your attentions.
Thank you very much. And now we turn on to the Vietnamese presenter, please.
Vâng, xin trân trọng cảm ơn tiến sĩ Chutathip.
Thank you, Dr. Chutathip.
Tiếp theo chương trình này thì chúng tôi xin phép trân trọng
Next, I would like to invite Professor Dr. Lê Văn Chiến, Director of Leadership Training, talking about environment governance in local level of Vietnam. You have 15 minutes. Thank you, Chairman. I think we have listened to different presentations, very interesting. I think mine is very brief. The first one, based on the UNDP investigation on local government, local governance, as you can see in one of the Thailand, one of the Thai presentation, you can see that we have to listen to the voice of the local people. And we do the same. In the CAPI, in the PAPI in Vietnam, we look at the seriousness in environmental protection, air quality, water source quality. And I focus here on the seriousness on environmental protection. And UNEP prefer to split it into three components. The first one is seriously in environmental protection that look at the percentage of people, seriousness of local people, of the government, of the local authority, of the community, and then air quality, and then water source quality, water supply quality. So you see that all of them are ranked with the top score is 10. So you see that each component is here is about 3.3. So we all add it up and we make it top 10. And we will see whether it is high or low in each subcomponent. On the right-hand side, you can see percentage. We will talk more about it in the next slides. In table 2, it's PAPI sample structures that we use. In Vietnam, we have 63 provinces and cities, and UNDP put them into 3 groups. Two big cities, and then the provinces with average population size, and 57 provinces or cities with small population. So with big population size province, we have Thanh Hóa, Bình Dương, Đồng Nai, and the other are just under 2 million in their population. And in the provinces, they visit different districts. They choose 3 districts in each province. With a big population province, they choose 6 districts. And then it's going down to number of commune selected, and then the number of people. And in the last line, you can see the total of respondents. So you see each year about 13 to 14,000 people are selected as respondents to get the data for PAPI. Okay, the outcome on environmental governance since 2018 to 2021. So there is an overall environmental governance. In 2018 is 4.63 out of 10. And then 2019 and 20, it's just 3.6, 3.5. And then in the second chart, it's again it's component on environmental governance points on the seriousness in environmental protection. You see the blue column, 1.97, and then the orange one is on the air quality, and then the gray one on water source quality. Please remember that each component will be maximum is 3.3. So in 2018, the percentage is very high. But from 2019 up to 2021, people look at air quality. You see, it's much taller than seriousness in environmental protection. But even they are high, the score is just 1.9, 1.83, 1.8. It's also low. Okay. Lowest is in 2020. Water resource quality is only 0.7. In this slide, it's environmental governance by provinces of Vietnam. In 4 years, 2028 up to 2021. So as you can see, there are 4 groups. The best one is the blue color code province, and then the green provinces in its color code, and then the yellow, and then the light pink yellow is the poorest one. So you say that mostly in the north of Vietnam and the south of Vietnam, the environmental governance is better, but the provinces in north central Vietnam, and northern of the South Vietnam, none of them are green at all. But the situation changed. And 2020, we can see more blue color, green color, but you can see in southern central Vietnam, the environment is really bad. In figure 4, it goes into detail on the seriousness on environmental protection. But you can see that described very well here, the percentage of people who said the local business did not give bribe to avoid obligation of environmental protection, or the number of people reporting environmental problem, or percentage of respondents who said that the competent authority that immediately resolve the environmental issues they report. And the last column shows the proportion of respondents saying that the local authority prioritize environmental protection over economic development at all costs. So you can see in 2008 we have only one blue color on bribery, on corruption. We have more statistics
và
on
sự trả lời
reporting
của chính quyền
environmental
đối với
problem
phản ánh của người dân đấy.
and the
Đó.
action of the local
Và đến năm
authority.
2020 và 2021
And
thì thêm các câu hỏi
21,
liên quan đến là chính
2021,
quyền có ưu tiên
we
bảo vệ
can
môi
see
trường
more
thay vì phát triển
people
kinh tế
giving
bằng giá không, cho nên
and
chúng ta nhìn thấy
giving answer
thế thì ở
on
trên bảng cái có các con số đấy
the
là
action of the
phần trăm, đúng không?
authority
Số phần trăm người
and
dân, chúng ta thấy cái
the
màu vàng đậm mà
priority
cao nhất ấy,
that local
là nó liên
authorities
quan đến
given
trách nhiệm của người dân.
between
Có một cái tỷ
protecting the
lệ khá lớn
environment
người dân đã
and
phản ánh
economic
cái vấn đề
development.
môi trường với chính quyền.
So you see, more people are now
Còn khoảng độ
reporting
50%, trên 50% người dân cho rằng là
about the
chính quyền đã phản hồi lại những cái phản ánh của người
measures
ta.
about
Lưu
the
ý một
environment
cái
protection.
dòng cuối cùng,
And
hai
you
cái
can
cột cuối cùng năm
see
2021 đấy,
in
và cái cột màu vàng
the
cuối cùng đấy.
yellow
Thì năm
column,
2020 là có
2020,
72,6%,
2021, we
2021
have
là có
72.6%,
64,8%. Số người được hỏi cho rằng là
and
chính quyền
2021,
thì đã ưu tiên bảo vệ môi trường thay vì phát
64.87%.
triển kinh tế
When people say,
bằng mọi giá.
you know,
Như vậy là có
they
khoảng
need to
2/3
protect the
số người
environment
được hỏi
more
cho rằng là
than
chính quyền đã
economic
ưu tiên bảo vệ môi
development.
trường.
So
Đây
I
cũng là
think
một
it
con
is
số
a
tương
good
đối là
point
tiến
to be higher in the future.
Hình 5 này thì liên quan đến chất lượng không khí. Thì chúng ta thấy rằng là cái phần này nãy cô Đặng Ánh Tuyết cũng đã trình bày qua đấy. Chúng ta thấy cái cột màu vàng là tỷ lệ người đánh giá chất lượng không khí ở nơi cư trú là tốt. Thì có khoảng gần 90% người dân Việt Nam đánh giá là không khí ở nơi họ sinh sống là tốt. Đó. Cái màu xanh là cái màu thấp nhất thì cho là cái tỷ lệ người dân ra đường
in the area they live.
Chúng ta thấy là năm 2020, 2021 là cái tỷ lệ
In
thấp hơn. Có thể là do
2020,
ảnh hưởng của Covid, mọi người ra đường là đều phải
everybody have
đeo
to
khẩu trang
wear
cả,
a
cho
mask
nên chỉ
because of the
có chưa đến
COVID-19.
20% là không phải đeo khẩu trang thôi. Đấy, thì cái chất lượng không khí nó
So you see the air quality here.
kém là một vấn đề, nhưng mà có lẽ là do ảnh hưởng của Covid nữa, cho nên chúng ta thấy
It's
là
low
tỷ lệ người đeo khẩu
because
trang nó cao lên, tỷ lệ
not
người
only
không đeo
of
khẩu
the
trang
pollution
xuống.
in the
Và
air,
xin
but
cái
also
slide cuối cùng
because of the
về
pandemic.
chất lượng nguồn nước thì
The last
tôi xin nói
slide
nhanh
is on
là
water
cái next slide
quality.
ạ, cái hình số 6 ấy, chất lượng nước sinh hoạt ấy. Vâng ạ. Thì ở đây nó phản ánh cái chất lượng nguồn nước ở gần nhà của người dân. Có
Here
đủ
it
để uống không?
reflects
Có
the
đủ để tắm giặt không? Có giặt rũ
safety
hoặc là tắm giặt
of
không? Cái này nó
domestic
liên quan đến
water
văn hóa của người
supply
Việt
in
Nam.
terms of
Nếu
quality.
như khoảng 20-30 năm trước đây khi chúng ta còn nhỏ
20, 30 years
thì cái
ago,
hình ảnh là
when we were small,
người dân ra ao giặt
you
quần
can
áo,
see
rồi là trẻ
people
em
can
bơi dưới
do the
ao, dưới sông,
washing
dưới
in the
hồ. Là một cái
pond.
hình ảnh rất là quen thuộc
Children
đối với
is
người
swimming in the
dân Việt
pond
Nam.
or the
Thậm
river.
chí nó đi vào thơ ca của Việt Nam rồi,
It
đúng không?
was very
Nhưng mà cho đến
familiar
ngày
to
nay
Vietnamese
thì
people using the natural
chúng ta
open
sẽ thấy là từ
water
thành
source.
thị đến nông
But
thôn, cái
now,
chất lượng nước là
in the countryside,
ở Hà
in
Nội
the
chúng ta thấy
city,
là
the
sông Tô
quality
Lịch.
of the open water surface is very, very low. In the countryside, same story. So that is the image that stay in the mind of Vietnamese people now about the safety of the domestic water supply. So the result of the survey give us a conclusion that economic development is always given a priority. It's a very high percentage, but the society, is very stable. The human relationship in Vietnamese society is one of our good point, but problem is in the environment. It's not enough protected. So that is why we want to raise some of recommendations in here. First, the recommendation to the Communist Party of Vietnam. You have a lot of solution on environmental protection, but in practice, the action cannot be seen. it is necessary to realize it in practice. I think that in the coming Congress of the Communist Party of Vietnam, there will be more insistence, there will be more emphasis, there will be more concern to be given to protection of the environment. And for the state, for the government, we recommend that you need to review the system of legal document on the environment, studying the establishment of a market for discharge permits. Perhaps it is one of the implementation of law. For example, it's a law on smoking cigarette. It is not actually good in practice. The third one is on the business community. They need to raise their awareness by propagating and disseminating the law. And strictly implement the law to the environmental protection. It's not only for the business, but also for the people. So that is the end of my presentation. Thank you very much for your listening. Right, thank you, Dr. Professor Lê Văn Chiến. Your presentation comes from grassroots level real life. We need to finalize, we need to better off our legal framework. Ladies and gentlemen, after we listen to 5 presentations, we move now to Q&A. Dr. Gawin Wadi and me, we will co-chair this session. First, I would like to invite Dr. Tawin Tawadi Burukul. I would like to invite
thank you very much.
Xin
Okay, now it's time for the expert to share the comment or discuss on the paper. For Thai side, we have Dr. Vijan Simachaya, the president of Thailand Environment Institute, who will help us to share the observations about the 2 papers from Thailand. Dr. Simachaya got PhD from University of Guelph, Canada in environmental engineering. He got a bachelor degree in laws and also graduate diploma in sanitary engineering and also environmental science and master degree from Kasetsat University and bachelor degree in chemistry education from Chiang Mai University. And presently, he is president of Thailand Environmental Institute. Also, he is the chairman of board of the directors of Thailand Greenhouse Gas Management Organization, public organization, and also chairman of the board of directors of Biodiversity-Based Economy Development Office is also a public organization. And he is former permanent secretary of Ministry of Natural Resources and Environment. So please, Dr. Vijan Simachaya. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Tawin Wadi, for your introduction. And good afternoon, everyone. It's my great pleasure to join the conference between KPI, King Prachatipot Institute, and Ho Chi Minh National Academy of Politics, especially in the environmental issue In my side, I'm going to comment on the two paper of Thai side. The first one is the paper of Dr. Nitya Ponok, academician KPI. The subject is on the environmental politics in Thailand, policy evaluation and management for sustainability. First of all, I would like to say that the paper is review a lot of information, especially from the past up to now. But my observation, if we can categorize when we talk about the politics, especially for the environmental concern, environmental issue, the board in our country we have two levels of policy. The first one is national policy. The second one is local authority policy, because the environmental issue belong to a local authority, especially for the waste management, wastewater management, air pollution, some stuff like that. If we can identify the two layers of the national agenda on environmental issue of the country would be good. And first of all, you better review the how environmental situation of Thailand in the past and compared to current situation. And if we can, you can link between the period of the political commitment or the policy on the even constitution linked to the environmental regulation, environmental policy during the period of national politics, even the local authority, that would be, we can see how politics get involved to the environmental issue. Even the Enhancing Environmental Quality Act 1992 also come from the revolution period thing. And for sustainable development, if we can identify and the linkage between the three pillars between the economic, social, and environment would be good. If we look for only one dimension, when we talk about sustainable development, we're missing the two important issue. Public participation also very important when we talk about public information, and also we can link to the paper from Dr. Chuthatip talk about the information. If we have the good information that NGO or people in general understand the information, we can share that information, and politics can make the policy related to the information that we call the science-based policy, especially for the environmental issue. Environmental in general is the scientific information. For example, when we talk about the PM 2.5, when we set the standard, we have to a certain number of PM 2.5. How we get there, I think the scientific information have to come. How we reduce the sort of major pollution, something like that. Policy have to come from the scientific information. Just why I mentioned the science-based policy also very important, along with the public participation, public understanding. Right now, government also set the long-term target, maybe similar to Vietnamese government. We have long-term strategy, or even from the COP26 climate change, we set the long-term strategy on net zero greenhouse gas emission of the country by the year 2065 or even carbon neutrality in the year 2050 or very short strategy on the year 2030 on the reduction of the greenhouse gas emission from 20% to 40%, for example. That's I just would like to show you that the figure come from scientific information. If the policy derive from scientific information, I think would be can go. And you mentioned about the environmental politics, but not just only the policy, but law also very important. Regulation related to how we can implement policy also very important. Even when we set the regulation, is the more important is also enforcement regulation. For example, we have environmental regulation, some government, some policy, and address on the enforcement of the regulation, but some policy or even local authority policy not implement regulation that our country also are facing with the environmental or also pollution problem. How we can transfer policy into action also very important. Just my observation from the paper of Dr. Nitya Pronok. But if you can divide the period of plan, we have 5-year plan, National Economic and Social Development Plan. We have long-term strategy like national long-term strategy, 20-year plan, how they link with the 5-year plan. And we have global agenda like a climate change, like net zero, I mentioned earlier, how it linked to the global agenda. Even the Kun Reno Mayor already mentioned earlier is the sustainable development goal. I think so also very important. Every country around the world have to implement that goal as well. That is my observation. For the paper of Dr. Juthatip Manipong, study finding on national reform on information asset pertaining to environmental and public health. I think this paper is quite very intensive. You also mentioned about the Thailand Personal Data Protection Act. Just very recently, PDPA also mentioned that. But my observation is that if we can translate data into information and to communicate people, I think it's very important. Somehow, when we talk about data information, some agency, they even know what is data, what is information. We just, when you call for information, you just got the list, long list of data, something like that. How the government translate data into information and can communicate with the public in general. Yeah, I think it's very important. We talk, or also government also talk about big data. I think it's very important. We have a lot of information, but at with the agency, especially for the agency at the department level, they have their own regulation, their own information, how it linked together. I think it's really important. I already give you some example. When we talk about sustainable development, we have to link with the social. We have to link with the economy. We have to link with the environmental issue. How can we link that? I think also very important. EIA, EHCA is some example of environmental information already mentioned under Information Official Information Act 1997, also mentioned in the Environmental Regulation 1992. But how this link together, I think also very important. Sharing this code information also very important. Some agency, they do not want to share information to the public. That how they can get involved. That kind of thing, I think is very important. Currently, the National Statistical Office already set the 3 group of the information, government of information, including the social dimension information, economic dimension information. I myself also serve as the chairman of environmental dimension information. The group going to work together and share that information. That's just for your information. I would like to suggest if you can make some case study on how environmental information linked to the Official Information Act 1997, I think would be make it clear. And I agree with you with the finding that you observed from the study, and also most recommendation from your side. If you can make a case study, I think the most people can understand more on the how it works in case of the open information for Thailand. This is just my observation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Now I would like to invite the discussion from the Vietnam side, please.
Kính thưa chủ trì hội thảo, đầu tiên là xin cảm ơn
Mr. Chairman,
ban tổ chức đã cho phép tôi là được tham dự cái buổi.
I want to thank you for giving me the opportunity on so very interesting issues, listening to interesting presentation on those presentation. I think my observation is rather brief on the 2 Vietnamese speakers. In fact, what I want to share with you on environmental protection, sustainable development they are not new issues. They are global issues. From my point of view, in public governance, I think it is like a commodity. Who supply? Who use it? What is the impact? And if you want to see the responsibility of the stakeholder, you can see that the community also a person who take responsibility, I don't agree. Because the community is a person who suffer, is a victim. And the people who cause environmental pollution is the business. And the government, local government, who regulates the economy life. So you see, if the government is helpless, like the greenhouse effects, it's a global issue. It is the job of the government. And the air quality is so low. But the government cannot do anything about it. The local government, in front of low air quality, cannot do anything about this. So what the business should do, what the local government should do, what the community should do, what the international community should do. So it is not just a story and issues of a particular place, a particular community, or a particular government, a local government. Sorry, now I think he is now just moving to a place in front of the camera. So when in that case, I think the Dr. Levenchien's presentation is interesting. But he say in PAPI investigation, we have to talk about the people who cause environment and who is a victim of the population. Now, to identify the causal factor of the population, of the pollution in the air, in the water, is very important. In Professor Đặng Anh Tuyết say community is the key actor, but the local community, they are not qualified enough to judge on the pollution, air quality, water purity, and water quality. So I think that the local community should not be blamed because they're not qualified enough to fight against the discharge of waste. It should be the role of the local government. You can see that information of a business entity, information about the waste discharge to the environment, it must be very clear. Now, you can see in Hanoi City, there are some instruments to measure the air quality. And then there should be the same instrument that measure the water quality in order to protect the life and health of the livelihood of the life of the local people. In Vietnam, there are two big stories. One's in the south of Vietnam, one in the central Vietnam, where the water is heavily polluted. The instrument is important because we need to have the information, we need to have statistics, we need to have the percentage of how clean the environment is before the business come to invest and then pollute the environment. There must be the baseline in order to check up. So all of those little things means that governance, environmental governance, as the Thailand said, the Thai speaker said, I think we need to be very concrete in green growth, circular economy. Environment must be our main concern now. So when I listen to the Vietnamese speaker, when I read their paper, I could see that well, it is not the job of one person. It must be a combination, coordination, cooperation of local people at all ages, from any background, to local authority, and then national government, and then the business, big and small. I don't know whether in Thailand people discharge in the street, they litter. But when I was in Australia, I see local people litter a lot. I don't think in Thailand there would be the same story like many years ago. So you can see in Singapore, they put a very heavy penalty on littering. But when I was in the Nanyang Singaporean Singapore University, I saw 4 people litter in the street with my own eye. So what I want to tell you here is whether there is the law, there is the regulation, but helping people, helping the business to raise the awareness of not littering, not discharging pollution. That is a good example. So, in the short amount of time, within the scope of our webinar today, I just want to give you some of my observation on the 2 presentations by Vietnamese speaker. I want to thank them because of their really comprehensive research. Thank you, Dr. Do Tuấn Cường, for your observation on the 2 presentations by 2 Vietnamese speakers. He emphasized very much on environmental governance must go together with the regulation framework, institutional framework. Then the framework must be very concrete with policy that involves the community, local government, and then thirdly, in Vietnam, environment must be one of the issues of a great concern by the government, by the state, and the Communist Party in its 14th Congress, which is coming very soon. We need to build the economy for people, not just green growth, not circular economy, not just that, but also economy for all people. And now we give the floor open to all participants to raise questions to the speaker and the keynote speaker. Now I can see one of the hand raised up. Please, Dr. Vũ Đức Hoài. He is one of the economic specialists.
Is there any question from the floor?
We have one question from the Vietnamese participant.
Yeah, please.
I want to wish Thailand participant, Thailand country, and Vietnam will be more consolidated to create a better living environment. After I listened to the presentation and the observation from a KPI, as well as listening to Vietnamese presentations and the observation, I think in my mind, if we want to have a better environmental governance, we need to have a set of standards. And when we have the set of standards like that, it will reflect the expectation of people of whether it is in one community or one region, one country, or one regional, global. Because environment is a story, is an issue of the globe. It's a global issue. Now, if you see the war that takes place in one place, but it has impact on the environment in a very large area, to the neighboring area. So I think the interaction between countries would help us to protect the environment, keep it green. And when we agree on the set of standards, it is easier for us to create a regulation, legal framework. And I think you also see it in the presentation. That is the set of indicators, where it is now, what it was before, what it would be in the future. Then local people, they need to keep an eye on that. They will keep an observation on this. The government use of power to regulate it. And with those basics observation, I would like to have some question to the Thai speaker. The first one, do you have any set of standard? Or if you do, is there any baseline? In Vietnam, we refer to the UN baseline, UN indicators. The second question, the Thai government, what have you done to raise people awareness and help the legal framework running smoothly in your country? 3, you often use secondary data information. we use we get the information mainly from the local authority, the local community, but we also use the researchers to investigate and then produce some data. We also call that secondary data. Should you in Thailand have this kind of data so that the local people can keep their eye, can observe, can survey on the activity in the local area right away, not waiting for the official data from the high level. And I think in Thailand, what the government have already committed, what the CSO, the civil society organization commit, what the people, local people commit to keep your environment green. I wish you, Thailand and the Thai people, good health. And thank you very much for your answer.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Vâng, cảm ơn.
We have two presenters and Dr. Vichan is with us. So I would like to invite
Câu hỏi
Kun
và tôi
Nitya and
mời
Ajahn
tiến sĩ
Chuthakip and also
giáo sư
Dr. Vichan
Vichan
to
sẽ
help answer the question. You can select the
giúp
question
tôi
that you would like to answer, and I think the
trả lời
person
các
that
câu
who
hỏi
can
đó.
answer all questions is Dr. Vichan also. So
Có
let's
thể
start
là
with
trả lời một
Kun
hoặc
Nitya.
là tất cả các cái câu hỏi mà
2 minutes each.
diễn giả có
Okay,
nước bên Việt Nam có đặt câu hỏi.
I can answer some question. The first one you mentioned about the standard. In Thailand, by our regulation, we have two kinds of standard. The first one is the ambient standard. For example, ambient air quality like a PM 2.5, even the standard for receiving water. The second one is the standard from very sort of pollution. For example, the standard, the certain kind of chemical from the industrial, from commodity, from agriculture source or something like that. We have that kind of standard. Our policy also we use standard for the enforce our regulation. For the second question you mentioned about the awareness, that we have school or non-school or even the public in general make awareness, especially for the certain kind of the environmental issue. For the data information, we have two levels, national data, I mentioned earlier. Government also address on the big data, try to use the big data, that if the government agency for national level or even local level spend a budget for collection the data, they have to provide the data for the public. NGO, I myself, when I retired from the government sector, right now I join with the Thailand Environment Institute and also non-profit organization. We work closely with the government sector. We also collect some information related to the environmental issue. We work closely with the private sector as well. Thailand Environment Institute also serve as the Secretary General Office of Thailand Business Council for Sustainable Development. We also, for example, group of plastic waste management. We also work closely with the government sector, with the private sector as well. That's the information that respond to your question. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you, Dr. Richard. I would like to share just only the information and the finding that I can gather from my research work for about legal framework in Thailand. We found from the research work, and I think that the legal framework in Thailand to tend to provide the opportunity of people to involve in decision making in environmental aspect more than in the past. For example, I would like to raise the example about the National Water Resource Act 2018 that just only initiated in Thailand. This law mentioned about the right and opportunity of people sector to involve in the river basin committee. And from the river basin committee, the representative from the community sector can be or have the opportunity to enter into the National Water Resource Committee. That is the trend of the legal framework in Thailand, that the people, I think people will have more opportunity to involve in decision making. And for the second question about the role of the civil society in Thailand, I found from the research also that is the finding from the focus group that I didn't mention in my presentation because I just only shortened the information into from the documentary research only. But I found from the focus group that the civil society in Thailand work together more than in the past. In the past, they might involve in environmental politics in aggressive manner, like protest when they face the problem about environmental issue, and they will claim to the government sector that they get the bad effects. So they claim, they complain, and the new way for their movement, they tend to movement in the creative way. For example, in the civil society in the southern of Thailand, they combine and work with the private sector from around 5 provinces to work together and produce their alternative to develop their southern area. And after they create their own proposal, then they try to propose the alternative way for their own region to the government sector. This is the example of the role of the civil society in Thailand. They tend to move to a more creative way than in the past. Thank you. That's my question.
Yeah, thank you very much. Dr. Juthatip, would you like to answer some questions?
Yes, please. I would like to say that I agree with the comments that we need some kind of local data and information in order to reflect the local livelihood of the communities. For example, right now I'm working with the people in Samut Sakhon. We are using the national standard on PM 2.5 air pollutions in order to reflect different source of air pollutions. In this way, so the local people, local government agency can do their own analysis and be able to set a kind of like a kind of practice of, in other words, to prevent that the health risks by themselves and then on time, because they cannot just only rely on the national data that sometimes it may not reflect on the local situations. That one. And the second point is about the data itself may not really help in terms of understanding the situation. Data analysis is very important. of course, the point is the data analysis need to take the we call local benefits or local perspective. It's not just only reflects the national analysis benefits only. For example, in this study that I did, we do the case study on drinking waters that actually the private sector have to get permission from the local government agencies to be able to provide the drinking water to the local community, but they don't have authority or permissions to conduct the monitoring and evaluations of that quality of the water, the drinking water. So this is questionable how this happens. So we need to have a kind of legal framework to support the authorities of these local agencies to be able to make the assessment or auditing the quality of the drinking water and be able to release the information for local community.
Thank you very much. So now we turn back to the Vietnam side. Maybe some more questions.
We want to thank you for the answer. I think the answer are so useful for us when we have the grassroots level local picture of how it can be practiced in Thailand. I think the examples are so brilliant to show the role of the community, of the CSO, going together with the local government, with the state, with the national government for the sustainable development in Thailand. Now, where environment and environment protection is one of the issue. Any question from Dr. Tun Kuang? Yes. May I just want to share some of my understanding about environmental governance. As far as I understand, I think we missed one important point. That is, environment is not just environment, but environment is also where it comes a lot of disease. For example, the pandemic, COVID-19 pandemic, and people wear masks. In future, infectious disease will be transmitted in the environment. So environment here to be governed is not just for clean and green, but it must also be safe. I think virologists and bacteriologists, when the environment is clean, then we cannot stop the spread of virus and bacteria. And now we can see virus that lived 1,000 years ago, they can just relive in the nature magazines or health magazine. They are worried about this. They are worried about new virus and old virus will be living. And then the monkeypox. Now, you see, so my question for you specialists in Vietnam and in Thailand, when we talk about environment governance, should we think of whether it should be a medium for the virus to be transmitted? In Thailand, do any one of you have the answer to the questions?
Okay. Thank you very much for your question. It's a very good question, but the answer quite very difficult. I try my best. environmental governance comprise the rule, the practice, the policy and institution that shape how human interact with the environment that you mentioned. The COVID-19 also the one of issue. We even know that maybe for the near future, we will have the COVID-20 or COVID-21 will come to our life very soon, but we're not sure that. But currently, we are facing with the COVID-19 pandemic. But after that, recession, I think, is very important issue. And the bigger wave after recession is the climate change issue. And the most biggest one is the biodiversity loss, that the impact to our human, especially even the increasing of temperature, only 0.5 degrees Celsius, but the impact to the biodiversity loss is the higher than other impact that we have to aware. You mentioned about the virus pandemic or something like that. We even know that, but how we stop the pandemic, we have to work together, especially how we can stop the or reduce the impact of climate change. I think it's very important. Thank you.
Yeah, actually, the situation of COVID-19 make environment, some part of environmental dimension getting better, especially for flora and fauna, I think, because the threatening to the flora and fauna less than before. I think so, and also the hygiene for the human being is being aware. But the con part, the disadvantage part is related to medical waste and many household waste that comes from the lockdown situation and a lot of garbage coming. So that's the bad situation according to the COVID-19. So would you like to answer some question, or will there be any questions coming, please? Yeah, from Vietnam, do you have more questions?
There is one more question from Vietnam. Please. Thank you, the chairman and chairwoman at this webinar. I'm so inspired with the people giving the presentation here today. When we are talking about policies or institutions in environmental governance, I recently read a book about why some country fails. Those countries, the United States, Germany, or some country in Africa, they say the failure is not because of their natural resource of the environment. They fail because their governance doesn't work. And I recently worked with some World Bank specialists on governance, on institutions. So environment is one of the issues, not only for a country, but also for the whole country. The policy do not work properly. Institution doesn't work properly. What can we do? It is a man-made action. What we can do to change people's minds, to change the mind of the business people. In Vietnam recently, we have a lot of policies that help with the environment, with the It's a society. We talk about green growth. We talk about circular economy. Head of the state, Prime Minister have been to the UK with a commitment that neutralize the carbon dioxide in the country. In other words, we are very active in protecting the environment. And after listening to the two Thai speakers, I see that you have the same concern. But I want to ask the UNDP representative that environment is the global issue, but we share the same Mekong River. We share the same water flow. So is there any guideline or suggestion from UNDP for the two countries to use the water properly? And we are the victim of scarcity of water, of pollutants from upstream countries, upstream factory. So is there any action or initiative or recommendation, instruction from UNDP that you can give Thailand so that we can protect the quality of the river water? Thank you for the question. I think there is a question for the Mekong committee rather than for the UNDP. But I think UNDP can also have some experience in telling you about the development program in this region. UNDP, are you still there?
Yeah,
Raynon Mayer?
he is not here yet, but I think Dr. Vichan can answer your questions because he worked extensively in this field. Yeah, please.
Okay, thank you very much. I myself also used to work with the Mekong River Commission as a director of Environment Division. Also visit Ho Chi Minh, Hanoi, and other province in Vietnam many times already. But I try my best to answer your question. You ask about the policy regulation sometimes not work well, but I would say integration, I think very important. If the government, relevant government in your country join hand and work together, I think we can get to the goal. Since we already have policy, we already have regulation, but in terms of enforcement, I think very important. In case of Thailand, somehow we are facing with the difficulty of the enforcement of a regulation as well. Some region, some rivers still facing with the pollution. Awareness raising, I think, is very important, but most important thing how we can get people behavior change, especially for the environmental friendly behavior. I think also most important. Thailand are also willing to share our knowledge, our experience on the environmental management with the Vietnamese colleagues. Right now, government also pay attention to implement the policy they call BCG. B stand for bioeconomy. C stand for circular economy, and G stand for green economy. Bio-circular green economy is the national agenda of Thailand currently that the relevant agency have to work together in the certain agenda in the certain area, try to move the country to the sustainable and low carbon country in the near future.
Thank you very much. Actually, according to the SDG, Sustainable Development Goal, in order to achieve the peaceful society, I think we need a partnership for the goal. That means the country that related to the Mekong River Basin, they have to work in collaboration with each other in order to conserve the environment. Otherwise, we will have problem in the future, and one country cannot solve the problem on their own. Yeah, thank you very much. I think the question, that should be the last question, right? Will there be another one? Oh yeah, one more question, please.
Thank you very much for your answer. I have one question from Dr. Thuy, Hồ Thị Thanh Thuy. Right, thank you, Chairman and Chairwomen. When I listened to the presentation, both from Thailand and from Vietnam, it gave me a very broad picture. I also feel very impressed with other questions that come from participants in this Q&A, where people are involved, government are involved. When I listen to Nithya Ponok, I can see that the government of Thailand have been trying a lot in order to enhance people's involvement and participation in environment protection. But you can also tell us that you see the people are not actively involved in the decision made on their neighborhood, on their living environment. Why? No, the government is try to make the legal framework better in 2017, but why the people? They are not so much interested. They are not as active as expected. Another question is for Vietnamese speaker. You refer to UNDP information. They say that the business bribe the local government to avoid the fee, environmental protection fee. How when the information is not transparent, if I think it is very hard to give the answers on the corruptions in this case in Vietnam. Right, thank you, Dr. Thanh Thuy. I would like to invite the speaker from KPI first.
Okay, please, Nithya Ponok, your
xin mời
question.
chị Nithya Ponok chị trả lời hộ câu hỏi.
From my finding, it doesn't mean that the people don't want to participate in decision making, but the government provide the opportunity to decision making, but it is very, very small opportunity, because when they involve in the decision making, you might think about the decision-making process. It might be the consultation process that the government organize the areas such as the meeting room or the public hearing. Those kind of the participatory process, the government will gather the data and information from the people. But in the final decision, we didn't know that the government will use your data into the decision or not. And another way in Thailand, we have the committee, like I mentioned you earlier, that we have the committee about water resource management. Those kind of the participation, we must limit a number of people to involve. For example, in the river committee, in the river basin committee, we have 22 river basin committee in Thailand. And each of the basin, it might be the composition around 30% in the committee. And in the committee, we'll have the composition of the government sector, private sector, farmer, and the community sector. So we have to share the proportion of the people to involve. So that's why we have a limit opportunity to involve. And it is more critical to involve also in National Water Resource Committee because the representative from the committee from the overall country have the opportunity to involve. I heard that from the last committee, there are just only one community sector from overall country who can be one of the committee from people's sector in the National Water Resource Committee. However, it is the initiation for people to involve in decision making.
Thank you very much. Actually, in 2017 Constitution Article 58 is very important because it's mandate that any policy or project that may have some impact to the environment, there must be environmental impact assessment and health impact assessment, and also public consultation from the stakeholders is needed. So that is one, and also the Article 77, before promulgation or any law or regulation, the public consultation from the involved organization and involved people is needed. And also regulatory impact assessment is needed. So that means public consultation and public participation in the decision-making process is very important in the Thai law. Okay, now I turn to the Vietnamese side, please.
Excuse me.
Ajahn Juthatip, you would like to answer? Yeah, please.
Yes, I just would like to add on Kunitiya's comments or reflections that as I mentioned in my studies that the lack of information for the communities or for the individuals who got affected by the government's investment or private investment, it's very limited. Like if you go on the website, you see something in general. It's not really about their village. It's not really about their city. So that's why how can they get involved? That's very difficult for them. That's number one. How they can relate the impact, or how can they relate the potential damage that can get into their families or to their communities. That's number one problems, because most of the data, it's really for the national use or for the central government. It's not really for the local people. It's not really for the local community. That is still difficulty or challenges for people to get involved in the decision making. Number two is when the people express or give the feedback to the investment, they really not been recognized by the government agency because they are not the representatives, as Kunitaya mentions. So that you can see that a lot of people protest on the street, or they put all the comments in the medias. So this is also another bottleneck. How can we involve different ideas, different perspectives that can make the inclusive decision making, and the people can get more involved in the decision making process.
Yeah, and one more thing. Thank you very much, Dr. Juthatip. And one more thing, that we have administrative court, that now there are many cases that related to environmental management. Many people submit the case to the court also, and we have environmental court also. So the final decision for the case that cannot settle, then the case go to court. Okay, I turn back to the Vietnam, please.
I think Professor Dr. Đặng Thị Anh Tuyết, dear chair people, I want to thank you, Dr. Thủy, for your questions. I just want to throw a light into why we have to pay attention to the local people, local community in environment protection. You see that our policy is to highlight the role of the local people and the environment. They participate because they know the information, they're aware of the information about the investment project, they're aware of the waste discharge to the living environment where they are living. And I think the local government need to give them an opportunity to raise their voice, to spot out, to detect where the waste is discharged, where the environment is polluted. That is the about the role of the local environment. My second look at this issue is that we need to have a set of standard. We need to have the indicator. Now, let's say it's the story of corruption, where people have to give money to the local authority so that they do not have to pay tax or fee. Sorry, it is not the local people. It's a private business. They avoid to pay fee, and how much local people know about this. I think it is very hard to know about bribery or corruption. How can local people know about the handshake between the local government and the private business? Well, I think we have finished the Q&A, and now I would like to invite Wendell. I think I would like to invite Mr. Wendell Catherine-Chuk will give a conclusion, wrapping of the webinar this afternoon.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. As we approach the end of today's session, I am very grateful for the opportunity to hear from all of the speakers. I'm not given the time, I'm not going to go over the contributions by name and by detail, but I am confident that all participants have been will leave this seminar with a better understanding of the environmental governance legal frameworks in both Thailand and Vietnam, as well as some of the barriers to participation and the concerns around public participation in environmental decision-making. This, I think, is very important for us to look at going forward. The experience in the West of 6 decades since the emergence of a political environmental movement have shown that environmental decision-making can have great consequences on people living in areas affected and can be the subject of great conflict. Experiences of confrontation and conflict have shown that people of areas need to have a role in making the decisions that affect them, beyond just consultation for gathering of data, but in substantive decisions. This is something that's been pretty well established in academic literature on public administration in the past 30 years. Today, we see intersecting trends that suggest that this is going to become even more important going forward. One of those trends, as UNDP resident representative Mr. Maya pointed out, is on the people's side throughout the world. Ordinary people have growing expectations that their voices will be heard and respected in matters of public policy, and growing means to make sure that their voices are heard and to protest if their voices aren't heard. The people sector needs a place at the table when governments make policy decisions. That heretofore has not necessarily been the case, as governments and business have worked closer together than involving the people affected by the decisions that they make. The second trend is the growing recognition that the world is seeing increasingly frequent and severe consequences for mishandling environmental issues. Taking the example of climate change, extreme weather events are becoming more frequent and more severe. This suggests that our development policies of past decades have been affecting not only the local environments, but also the broader global environment. This means that consequently, there is growing consensus that strengthening political decisions, not just nationally, but with nations coordinating, will be necessary to address these problems. If we cannot do this going forward, we may face consequences that we can't even imagine. It is therefore important that governments and their citizens work together in collaboration in making these decisions that will affect the people within the countries and beyond their borders. Citizens' participation will be necessary because with any change, pain will possibly be involved. And without a share in making the decision, it might prove unacceptable for populations. So, keeping all this in mind, the work that we've seen today on the legal frameworks and on improving people's participation in the decision-making should be important as Thailand and Vietnam move forward to address these issues. hopefully seminars like this one will continue and help us move forward productively. That's all the remarks that I have on behalf of KPI. I would like to thank all of our Vietnamese partners at Ho Chi Minh Academy for the opportunity to take part here. I would like to thank the Thai speakers and thank the Vietnamese speakers. And I would also like to, while I still have the microphone, ask that as we wrap up today's session, if participants could assemble for doing a group photograph before we leave, we would be most grateful. So thank you again for the opportunity to be here today, and good day.
Thank you, Wanda Choke, for your wrap up. I would also like to invite Dr. Professor Dương Trung Ý to give a wrap up from Vietnamese side. Dear all honored participants and research fellow scientists from Vietnam and Thailand. More than 3 hours of working and discussing our talk show has gone too fast with a successful ending. We have listened to 5, 6 speakers presenting their research in this room, and 3 online from Thailand on environmental governance, public policy and governance, sustainable development, 1 from UNDP. We have seen that it focuses on some of the issues. Right. It's first, it is the importance of environmental governance in the world and in the region today. It is a global issue. It is international and global issues. It's of the issue of our mankind. It is not belong to the past, but it is the current issues today. It is not environment for environment, but environment governance should be given a new, larger definition. It covers natural resource, it's a living environment, it's a working environment, it's cover large space, it's multi-dimensions, it's cross-border. In the process of development over the recent decades, many countries in the world have made policies on environment governance. And before making the policy, those countries have already predicted the impact on the environment. They did listen to researchers, they did listen to scientists, they did listen to the people, local people, before they make a policies about the environment governance. United Nations organization, the global dimensions organization have launched a large program since 1972, and in 2000, and when it comes into effect in the General Assembly, it also start up a new area of sustainable environmental governance. We also see the civil society organizations who participate, who join hand with us. And I think that environmental governance is the job of many stakeholders, government, society, business, people. They involve directly or indirectly. And the involvement of people, the participation of the local people have been enhanced, have been emphasized recently. And I have already seen in this webinar that we need to combine different solutions. In other words, we need to have a good system where the solution act and work. Then it is not just a national environmental governance. It should be international environmental governance. And to protect the environment, environmental governance is not just required our awareness, it's not just require responsibility, it requires action. Action for sustainable protection. It's law, it's a policy. In 2020, on the 17th November, we issue a law on law protection with 6 chapters and 170 clauses. We also have seen a lot of successes in Thailand in environmental protection. For Vietnam, when we start off with economic reform, we pay attention to environment protection, how we protect the environment. We have some achievement, important achievement. The resolution of the 13 Communist Party Congress have already said that we have to use and protect the natural resource, the environment. We have to think of all solution and action to mitigate the climate change. And it is one of our concern, of our duty for a sustainable development of the country. We also think of the socio-economic development from now to 2030, try to mitigate the climate change, to better use, effectively use the natural resource, protecting environment, people's health, etc. is our top priority. Try to stop all the projects that may jeopardize the environment. We protect the biodiversity and the ecology. We follow the green growth economy, the circular economy. So that is insisted in the document of the Communist Party in Vietnam. And we don't want to trade off environment with economic development. I think one more thing that many of you in this webinar agree that you in Thailand or us in Vietnam on the environmental governance is the national strategy and international strategy on environment protection. As Wendell already talked about, in other words, we have to solve the problem of economic development and environment protection, protecting the ecosystem, the biodiversity. As you can see now, environment pollution can be seen in different places, but mostly in urban area, in industrial zones, where it pollutes the water of the river. Air quality, noise pollution is also another issue today. The quality of the safe water in natural resource. You see experience in the world and in Vietnam. We can see a lot of economic development projects that explore the natural resource is also where we can see heavy pollution. Oh, circular economy, recycle the material, repurpose the commodity for to help people's living. High technology, agriculture that adapt very well to the natural setting of different provinces, and we learn a lot of good lessons from Thailand. So, honor participants, ladies and gentlemen, all what I have made a long list before should be put into policy. Those are the 7 bullet points that I can see when I listen to those presentations. And I hope that after this webinar, we try to finalize our writing and we put that into publication. And then we can disseminate, just tell people about our research so that the other people can learn a lot of lessons. Now we've been having 4 hours with no tea break. The webinar is successful. On behalf of Ho Chi Minh Academy of National Academy of Politics and KPI Thailand, scientist, research fellow, I wish you all good health, happiness, and success. And may the cooperation between the 2 institutes, Ho Chi Minh Academy and KPI Thailand, a better success and cooperation in future. Thank you. Right. Thank you, Chung Mi, the professors and vice president of Ho Chi Minh Academy. And now we come to the photo session together with the staff from the Thai embassy for the photo session. And I want to wish you all good health, and we hope to have a face-to-face meeting in Hanoi.
Thank you very much. As you do your photo session in Hanoi, we would be grateful if you could all assemble before the camera, so we could also do the same here and get a photo of both of our groups together, as it were. So, yeah, thank you very much. Thank you very much, and thank you for the opportunity. We look forward to working with you again. Oops, and we're all done.